Hey, welcome to another episode of Inquiring Minds. I'm Steve Harper, and with me is my co-host, Donna Carlin. How are you doing today, Donna?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for today's conversation because I think this is going to be one that gets people talking.
Yeah. The new year is all about reflection. And rather than, wait until the end of the year to figure out what was the whole year like, that you just lived and set intentions or goals or New Year's resolutions, whatever you want to call it for the new year's already underway. And I'm inviting people to reflect back to the past week or the past month rather than the past year so they could course correct a lot more frequently. So my question for you and our
No, for
listeners.
our audience, not for me. I just happen to be
Yes, for
here.
you too. Absolutely. I love putting you on the spot. So what did you not find time for?
I mean, I already knew
And
what we were going to talk about, but now I'm like, now I'm on the
yeah,
spot.
you're on the spot. So it's not really finding time, it's making time, right? Because we all have the same amount of time. Some people work more hours than other, hint, hint. And I'm looking at what did you not make time for?
Yeah. Yeah. So I have actually had a realization about this over the last few months and have course corrected it. But one of the things that I recognized I was not making time for was my passion is reading. I love reading. I'm constantly reading. And I found myself often reading only books that applied to work or to business. And I don't like that. And so what
Yay.
I was not making time for was pleasure reading. You need some of that, just get lost in a spy novel or a mystery or just a good piece of fiction. And I have done a little bit better job uh, making some time for that reading, but not as well as I could. And so one of my goals this year is to focus on that, because that, to me, I look at that as it's not just a goof off activity, or it's not just a pleasure activity. It's a great way for my brain to unwind, to disconnect from all the stresses and struggles of work and challenges that I have day in and day out. Being an entrepreneur and a coach and a consultant, I get an opportunity to just give my brain a little peace. And that is something that as I look back over the past 5, 10 years, I have done less and less of. And, it bothers me, and it bothers me because I'm not making time for myself.
You know something? Reading a really good book takes us on a journey to places that we never would have known, no matter what those books are.
Yeah.
And I concur with you because I find myself reading tons of books that are work related because that's part of my work. I recommend great reading material for my clients. So I'm not even reading things in my field of interest. I'm reading things in their field of
Yeah.
interest to let them know that, it might be really insightful for them to read them. So what I started doing was I subscribed to Audibles.
Yep.
And so here you go. I love murder mysteries and I love, James Patterson, I think is the
Yeah.
author. His books, the Alex Cross stories and all of that. The problem with that is when I, travel and I'm in a hotel room, I put on an audio book because my eyes are so tired from being totally focused throughout the day. I can't turn it off.
I
One
have
more
the
tap,
opposite
it's 2
problem. I'm
o'clock in the
right to
morning.
sleep.
Yeah, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm going, I have to get some sleep. I have to work tomorrow. And I'm just so invested in the book, if it's read properly,
Sure.
etc. And I find that I'm still able to consume novels, even when my eyes are really, really tired. And just a little aside for our listeners, I was told this by a professional that we use 70% of our energy in seeing. Think
Hmm.
about that because our brains are processing everything that our eyes capture. If
Yep.
we have problems with our eyesight, it ups, to a higher percentage. And as you get older, if your eyesight starts, waning, so to speak, not my mother who has better eyesight than I do, but at 94, what is amazing is you're using up so much energy, then you're expending energy reading as well. So it sort of takes away some of the great byproduct
Yeah.
of getting involved in a book. And I know that this segment is not about reading. The segment is what did we not make time for? And it's I find a lot of the responses that I'm getting, because I'm asking my clients this. Um, I'm not making time for the important people in my life.
Yep. Yep.
That is really one of the top answers. I'm not making time for my spouse. Even if we're together, we're not together. We're both on our phones or we're watching a show. We're not making time to be with the important people in our lives.
Yep.
So, Mr. Steve, you said that you made this resolution or this goal for the new year. So now that the new year is upon us, how are you doing with that goal? But
Yeah.
it's an important question.
It is. I actually have found that I'm doing a lot better. Like you. I am I'm a big consumer of Audible, and so what I've actually found is that I leave the time for the pleasure reading in the evenings, and then I feel like I still tick my box that I need to for my professional obligations by reading, much like you do, a vast majority of material that you often have to have in order to utilize as a reference point or recommendation, etc. And so what I've done is I've actually worked it into my workout routine. So every morning I go to the gym. I've got Audible playing. It used to be I get lost in podcasts or random music, etc. But now I actually am intentional about that time. So I get the work reading done more effectively that way, and actually has stimulated a lot more creativity and ideas because I've done that. I walk in with sort of this new sense of enthusiasm when I walk into the office, which has been great. That piece has been good, but then it doesn't make me feel guilty about spending time in the evenings before I go to bed, spending time reading. And even though that is interesting though about the 70% consumption, because that could very well be my eyes are not as good as they used to be, and I need to go and have them reassessed. But it has become a bit of a chore reading at night because it does seem to be a big thing to do, and it's probably because it's like you said, it's consuming so much effort to do that it often makes me super tired. And so I used to be able to read for hours before I'd actually
Right.
fall asleep. Now not so much. Part of that's probably age related, but maybe some of it is to your point about that 70%. Maybe I'm consuming too much effort by doing the actual activity. But all in all, I would say doing much better on that. If you were asking me that question as of here and now, I would have a similar answer. I need to be spending more time taking my wife out on date night. That's what I need to be doing, right? I need to make that a priority. If we do it every now and then, and it really needs to be a weekly or even a bi-weekly thing. And with the kids in school and finishing up, we're closer than we've ever been to the empty nest finish line. It'll be easier, but you can't keep putting those things off. You have to start putting priorities on those important relationships. And so that's one that I'm going to work on point forward. What about you?
For me, it's disconnecting. I think I need to make time to not do anything all the time, if that makes any sense at all. Um, you're right about the age thing. The older you get, the less energy you have, and you're still trying to expend the same amount of energy on having crazy days and crazy schedules that you didn't have 5 years ago, for
Yeah.
example. So that's one thing. I think it's paying attention to me, to my health, my physical being. If I'm struggling, because I'm a cancer survivor and I still have some issues with that, I need to pay attention to my body, and I need
Yep.
to take time to do nothing and not always do something. And that's really a struggle for me because I love doing stuff.
Yeah.
It's not that I have to, it's because I love doing stuff. So I'm consciously looking at how I commit my time, even if it's reading. I was looking at that. A lot of people are writing these days, which is fantastic. And many have asked me, could I review this chapter, that chapter, or my book? And I'm happy to do that. I just can't necessarily do it right now. And it's setting boundaries at the same time as what you're making time for. So there's a lot. I think the most beautiful part of our conversation here is in asking the question,
Yep.
what did I not make time for? And if you ask the question, you'll reflect enough to say X, Y, or Z, or Z if I'm speaking to Americans, and 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 you know what? That's not acceptable to me. I want to change. I want to course correct. I want to do more of this, less of that, so I can do more of this. That kind of thing. Asking the question is really the key nugget here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you are always good at follow up questions, right? But what happens if you don't make that change to do whatever it is that you've not been making time to do? You miss out on important opportunities, important milestones, important conversations, important experiences because you're putting other things ahead of what you know you should be doing. I think when you put it on the table like that for our audience, every one of us probably comes up with that thing instantly that they know that they have a little pang of regret that they know they need to be putting more attention towards or they need to be attempting to accomplish. And when you can identify it, it's one thing, but what you're going to do to change it is something completely different. And you only get there by asking, what happens if I don't do this? What happens if I'm not going to change anything? I'm not going to, modify my behavior in any capacity. And what potentially could I miss out on if I don't, do that? I think it really helps open up a really interesting perspective for you to kind of go down that mental rabbit hole to start looking through things to say, well, maybe I need to prioritize some things a little bit differently. And like your point with your health, right? There is no other bigger priority. You have to do that. And
That's right.
it's an essential component. And if it was, I'm going to train for a marathon, well, I can train for a marathon this year, or I can train for a marathon next year, but it's probably not as critical as some other things that I'm potentially putting off that have an impact in the here and now. And so looking at those, types of activities where you might segment, what's important to you, kind of keep that in mind and sort of look at that from a perspective of, risk and reward, I guess, in a lot of ways.
So I'm going to build on that because you have a valid point. The follow up question for me isn't what would happen if I didn't do it. The follow up question for me is how important is it really to you? Because I think, we say we didn't make time for this, we didn't make time for that. How critically important is it to you? If it's critically important, that's looking at it through the lens of, no, this is number one priority.
Yeah.
And I will do it because I want to, not because I have to, because I want to.
Yeah.
It's important to me. That's a whole different paradigm. If you say, what's going to happen if I don't do it? The world's not going to fall apart if I don't read. I mean,
That's true.
that's the bottom line. I love to read. Why in the world am I wasting time elsewhere if I can sit down with a really great book and get lost in it, which totally, relaxes, might keep you on edge if you're listening to, Alex Cross story.
Yep.
However, you'll get lost in it and the rest of the world disappears. It's like when I paint, 10 hours could go by and I don't even realize that the day's gone because I am so immersed in painting, my porcelain, and it's so relaxing. It's
Yeah.
just so calming and peace bringing. So is that important? Absolutely. When we live crazy lives, that is critically important because it keeps us mentally and physically healthy.
Yep.
So ask yourself, how important is this for me? If I didn't make time for it, what can I do instead so that time is freed up that I devote to something that's critically important to me?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, I'm super curious as to how our audience takes this because when you and I were before we pushed record, we said, "Oh, this might get a strong reaction." So I'm curious
Yeah.
as to how people take this particular topic, what their thought process is, or maybe what they're not making time for. So, Donna, how could they share their thoughts with us?
The best place is in our Facebook group, Inquiring Minds, with Donna Carlin and Steve Harper. Join the group, get involved in the conversation. Let us know if you had this conversation at home, in the workplace, and what it brought to mind for you. We would love to hear, as well as any topics you would like us to discuss or delve deeper into. It would be fantastic. You could also get us on our website, ripplecentral.com, for the king of ripplers, Mr. Harper. I'm at donnacarlin.com, Carlin with a K, and let us know. However, if you want to hear other people's points of view, the best place really is the Facebook page or on our YouTube channel.
Yep.
We'll answer comments on there as well.
Yep. Excellent. Well, I'm glad we made time for this podcast. I'm glad we made time for this particular topic because it was a fun one. And I'm so grateful for these conversations and the opportunity to have them with you every week. So I wish you a fantastic day, and I suggest you go find something that you've been putting off to go do it.
Have a great one.
Have a great one. Bye-bye.